Our superhero summer sermon series. And this week's superhero is Captain America. Anyone familiar with Captain America? I think a few of us are. Some of us are. Okay. The beginning of Captain America's story is about Steve Rogers, which was his given name. Steve was born in New York in the 1920s. His parents were poor Irish immigrants who both passed away before Steve reached adulthood. While he was in his early 20s is when World War II broke out. And Steve desperately wanted to serve his country, and he tried to enlist in the U.S. Army. Unfortunately, he's something like 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, has asthma, and his medical records read like a 90-year-old. So he was rejected, and rejected, and rejected, and rejected, and rejected. Steve goes to 5 different recruiting stations, each time lying about who he is because he so badly wants to serve his country. All of his buddies have enlisted. He wants to sign up too. When I was first thinking of different Christian themes to go with the superheroes, at first I wanted to say integrity for Captain America, because he sticks to his principles and he's loyal and he does what he says he's going to do. However, in his desperation to enlist in the army, he keeps lying on the form, giving a different name or a fake hometown or a different birthday, anything to make the army willing to enlist him. And that persistence, instead, won out over integrity. Steve Rogers is not too different from the widow in our gospel lesson this morning. This widow keeps going to the judge, seeking justice for her case, and the judge keeps refusing to hear her case. It says the judge neither feared God nor had respect for people. He was an unjust judge. In the end, however, the widow wears him down because she persists. She keeps bugging him about it. She keeps pestering and nagging him and calling him and probably emailing if they had email then. She's seeking for justice, and eventually the judge does grant it. He says, even though I don't fear God or respect people, yet because of all the trouble this widow is giving me, I will see to it that she gets her rights. If I don't, she'll keep on coming and finally wear me out. The widow persevered, and eventually the judge granted her justice. Steve Rogers persevered in trying to enlist in the army to serve in World War II. And at that 5th recruiting station, a scientist overhears Steve and his friend talk about how Steve is going to forge his application again. This scientist, Dr. Erskine, has invented a super soldier serum, and he thinks that Stephen is an ideal candidate to try it out on. So he approves Steve's 5th application to enlist. Steve goes into basic training with a small group of young men, all of whom are candidates to receive this experimental super soldier serum. What distinguishes Steve, though, from the rest of his class is his tenacity as well as his selflessness. In the movie version of his story, the instructor tosses what appears to be a live grenade into the group, and while everyone else runs away, Steve leaps on top of it, willing to sacrifice himself to save the others. And as a result of that selflessness, Steve is chosen to be injected with the super soldier serum and receive the Vita radiation that will enhance the serum. At the end of the treatment, he emerges a foot taller, 100 pounds heavier, solid muscle. Because of his perseverance, Steve finally becomes a soldier. Because of her perseverance, the widow is finally granted justice in her case. Now, the author of Luke tells that story of the widow and the corrupt judge is a parable that Jesus tells It's a parable Jesus tells to his disciples to teach them that they should pray always and never become discouraged. Anyone need to hear that word today? To pray always and not become discouraged? Pray always. Do not lose heart. It's similar to part of our epistle lesson this morning. We heard from chapter 9 as well as from chapter 12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer. Another translation says, be happy in your hope, stand your ground when you're in trouble, and devote yourselves to prayer. Devote yourselves to prayer. What would happen if we did that? We're used to being told to be happy, we're used to being told to be patient, but to pray all the time? That always seems like a bit much, or something better left to the professionals. Other people surely are better at praying than I am. Or other people seem to have their prayers answered more often than I do. I don't need to be the ones who pray. What difference does it make anyway? Well, beloved, there are several people here among us this morning, I know, who can tell you that prayers do work, that your prayers are needed and appreciated, and that God does answer prayer. So keep praying. Persevere. There's an acronym about prayer called PUSH. It's the sermon title also. You may have seen it in your bulletin and wondered what it meant. Anyone know what PUSH stands for when we're talking about prayer? Yes. Pray until something happens. Keep praying. Pray until something happens. Keep trying. Keep submitting that recruitment application form. Keep praying until something happens. And keep in mind that what we want to happen may not be what happens. God doesn't always answer how we want him to. Steve Rogers persevered and got what he wanted, kind of. Instead of being shipped off to the European theater to fight, he's enlisted in the United Service Organizations, the USO, and performs with showgirls, playing a soldier named Captain America. Steve doesn't actually see any action until he's sent to Europe with the showgirls, and on his own he goes looking for some prisoners of war, including that friend from the last recruiting station. He's successful in rescuing them. And now that he has proven himself as a soldier, he is then finally sent on a mission, along with the division he just freed. It's not the path that Steve had in mind to serve his country. He just wanted to be a regular enlisted soldier. But in his perseverance to serve his country, being willing to do it in any way that was open to him, he became not just any soldier, but a super soldier, Captain America. And because of his tenacity and his loyalty, he became a very good soldier, one ready to obey orders, one good at planning and carrying out strategy. Much later down the road, Captain America joins the Avengers and ends up the leader of that group of superheroes, precisely because he's good and trained at tactical strategies. He was just trying to serve. And because of his persistence and his willingness, he became a superhero. There's one more thing about the super soldier serum, which is that it doesn't wear off. Somehow Captain America's body, which is at the peak, of course, of natural human potential in terms of strength and endurance, agility, speed, reflexes, durability, and healing, his body can also regularly replenish the super soldier serum. It becomes part of his blood, and so just as we naturally make more blood, he makes more of the serum in his blood. And so as a result, he heals really quickly. When he's wounded, he can run a mile in 73 seconds. That's what they say. His character, how he was designed. He can bench press 1,200 pounds. And his stamina just keeps him going far after a normal person, or even an athlete, would get tired. Makes you a little jealous, huh? You'd have more energy than a 2-year-old. As Christians, we know that our strength is renewed and replenished by God. Our Isaiah lesson this morning tells us that those who trust in the Lord for help will find their strength renewed. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and not grow weak. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? And it happens by intentionally spending time with God, praying every day, reading the Bible some every day, listening to what God says, being still and silent. These are all spiritual disciplines. Not the ones you often hear about more, like fasting or taking a day of rest. But they're ways that when you do them on a regular basis, which is what makes them a discipline, because you need self-discipline to do them regularly. They're ways that draw you closer to God. And to persevere in prayer means to also persevere in your relationship with God. It means you want to grow closer to Him. You want to know more about Him and about what He wants for your life. It means you want to have a close friendship, a close relationship with Him, and not just someone you say hi to once a week, Sunday morning. Those who trust in God, those who hope in God, those who wait for God, those who persist and keep doing all these things, they shall renew their strength. They shall run and not get tired. They shall walk and not fall behind. It's a promise. You keep doing these spiritual practices, these things that draw you closer to God, because otherwise we wear out. What happens to someone who's not a runner when they run a marathon they haven't trained for? At the end, they're absolutely exhausted, dehydrated, out of breath. Your spiritual life is important to your overall health. Persevere in keeping it up. And I can't promise you'll have the same effects as super soldier serum. But God will give you new energy and fresh strength for each day. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus says that each day has enough trouble of its own. And God will see you through each day as well. When you persevere in your relationship with Him, He'll give you enough energy to deal with the enough trouble of each day. There's a contemporary Christian song I've been playing on repeat in my car the past couple weeks. It's called 10,000 Reasons, Bless the Lord, by Matt Redman. And the first verse says, I'm not going to sing it. It says, the sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. However the day goes, whatever may come to pass, may I still be singing God's praise when the evening comes at the end of the day. May I have the perseverance and the energy to get through the day, to keep praying in spite of whatever may happen, that at the end of the day, I am still praising God. At the end of the day, Captain America is still standing. He hasn't gotten tired. And where are you at the end of the day? Are you still blessing the Lord? Did you spend enough time with Him during the day? Did you pray all day long, praying until something happened? Or are you dead on your feet, useless, good for nothing, and about to lose your faith? If you persevere and persist and keep at it, your faith, your relationship with God, is one area where you really do want to be stubborn. After all, stubbornness is the word that we use when we don't want people to be persistent. We call them stubborn as an insult. However, be stubborn about God. Be stubborn about your faith. Persevere in seeking God and keep at it. He may not answer how you want Him to or how you expect Him to. My prayer for each one of us is that all who seek God or a deeper knowledge of Him may find and be found by Him. Amen.